Hey guys, it's Ralf with Stray Benzes. Another glorious cold day in the winter, almost getting ready for springtime here. As you can see by my face, I've been really deep into it. That's the 8th oil leak on the transmission. Don't do as I did. When you yank the transmission, you put new O-rings and seals all over the place. Anyway, today what I did was changing this little booger here. It's an O-ring that is actuating the brake band 2, K2 or R2, that is sitting right next to, maybe within 2 inches of the gear selector switch, and it causes a pretty good external oil leak. The O-ring was rock hard. I'll show you what you have to do, and it is just by the sheer luck that the Benz engineers put the O-ring groove pretty close to towards the outboard end, so you can actually change it out without completely tearing down the transmission, which is amazing. So that's the gear selector shaft, and that's the piston. And for whatever reason, they made this a through bore. So this part goes on the inside and has a oil feeder groove that gets fed by the tube here, and it goes in here. And that is why when that O-ring gets to be rock hard, that is yet another oil leak that you're gonna have to deal with. What you have to remove to even get to this is you have to loosen up the drive shaft. The propeller shaft needs to come off. You need to have the gear tranny support come off. You have to have the tranny supported with a car jack, so you can lower it, because you need to lower it in order to get to the safety switch off. And then you need to take the 2 bodies and the intermediate plate off here, which there's some other stuff on the internet. Other people have done it. They don't lose a couple of things. There's a pin that goes, centering pin that goes in here. There's a small little check valve that mustn't be messed with. There's a piece here that you had better not lose. So loosen up that intermediate piece. Very, very careful. It comes off together with a rear housing with many small little screws. All the hex bolts have 8 Newton meter torque, and that's an oil guide that you also are better off not messing with. You clean everything up, but what you have to do in order to get to that O-ring, you have to push that thing in, and you can only do that if you remove, and I hope I can show that to you, because it's very tricky to get to. Boy, no good way to get here. There you go. There's a teeny tiny dog bone looking thing in there, and there's a piece of plastic that you also, when you buy the O-ring, buy this little plastic thing. Just by taking this little dog bone out, and you can take a screwdriver, put it against here, and then you can, hold on, I can probably do it with my finger. Yeah, there you go. So you can push this all the way back, and this little dog bone thing comes out with the big end towards the brake band and a little one towards this little piston. And then you either have a helper, or you need to immobilize the screwdriver so you can push the brake band all the way out, or together rather, so you can move this little housing here, and that's the cylinder, inboard, and only then can you finally get to this bloody O-ring, which in my case it was rock hard. It took me 10 minutes to get the O-ring out, and there's a new O-ring already back in it. You put the plastic part and dog bone back in. Now the centering mechanism piece of plastic that's going to go in here next. I'm going to clean up the intermediate plate, and I'm going to show you a couple other things that you should just take a look at while you're down here. Here's the feed tube that feeds that piston with oil. for that brake band that needs to be assembled, reassembled without stress and everything. This is the intermediate plate. Once you get that out, there are 4 straight tip, flat tip screwdriver screws that loosens up this whole plate. And that's the bottom plate. And there are 2 little screens in here that can foul up. In this one, this tranny has 200,000 miles on it. I'm actually amazed how clean it is. Whoever had it before must have done fairly well with the maintenance. I'm gonna clean that out. Got a new gasket. There's that gasket right here. Comes off. Not worth recycling. Cleaning everything up, and then this thing is going to go back together. You have a couple more parts that had better stay in place. That's the gear selector, and a couple of small components, return valve, and this little thing. Just make sure that that stuff is going to stay put when you put it back together. Otherwise, there's going to be some fun stuff that's going to happen to you. What else? That's about it. That's the piece that goes in that holds together the brake band and centers it, because otherwise it's just going to flip-flop around in there. Very vital component. After successfully fixing it, I can also show you a couple of details on the explosion drawings of this thing. This diagram shows the 722.3 and 0.4 transmission and all these different details. Here you have the brake band, the B2 rear band that I had to like squish together in order to get this little piston out. This big valve block you need to remove first. Then you need to remove the rear assembly, and the rear assembly is coming apart together with that intermediate plate. And the intermediate plate comes off of this rear assembly by loosening up that plate. That's the little pipe that supplies the oil for that piston. And yeah, so much for that. Here's the further detail. And there is that little expansion valve. It's really a hydraulic piston, and that's the O-ring that goes right behind the gear selector right there. That's where the gear selector goes with that little shaft here. Now, very common oil leaks happen right around the vacuum pot assembly right there. Gear selector, sometimes, but more rare, the my goodness, the secondary shaft that drives the secondary oil pump. That's a speed governor. That's more rare. That rear shaft seal can leak. This gasket of the rear housing can leak. The kickdown valve can leak. There are very tiny O-rings on here that if the O-rings are busted, you can don't put any try to put any sealant on there. It's not going to work. It's just not going to reseal again. And I'll show you the other side too, where some other favorite leaks are occurring. That's actually the secondary oil pump that is driven by this governor on this side of the housing. So let's move over to the other side. This is the secondary oil pump. There's an O-ring back there as well that you can and have to change out. And there are a couple of them. There's another one in this housing. A little bit of advice when you fix this thing. There's a very important part. This little looks like a screw, but that's a part of a rod that attaches to a lever that holds the governor in place. This slot needs to be perfectly parallel
to the transmission engine and the bottom of the car. If it is not, you're going to wreck that car, the transmission, in about 300-500 miles. So that's a really rather important little detail. You need to take the screw off. Then these 3 Allen screws, you can take the whole assembly out, put new O-rings in. Sometimes there's a little Teflon seal on the inside. If you want, change that too if it's worn, and put it back together. Tighten the housing first, and then you counter hold the rod here with the that little flat tip screwdriver. Tighten it, and that's that one. There are a couple of other ones on that side of the transmission, and that's this cover. That one is really interesting. That's the one that I, in the previous video, told you about. When you leave the transmission in, you need to build your little jig with a couple of pieces of, like a big bolt and a couple of pieces of tubing that helps you slowly move this cover out without really ever letting go of it, because there's a small little tiny rod that stays engaged. If you disengage it and you can't put it back right, yeah, guess what? We're going to have to take the tranny out anyway. And then there's that cover that can leak, and way up front here there's the dipstick O-ring. Don't put sealant on them, get the right O-ring. Here's the kickdown solenoid. There's a seal ring, a crushed seal ring, O-ring there, O-ring there, and O-ring there. It can very easily get overlooked, and these rock hard O-rings will let oil come pour out the back, and it won't drive right. See, there's the rod that sticks out and grabs a hold of the governor here. Missed a little detail. It's going to be an expensive mistake. Here's the little pin. See the 2 mark in the back, that when you remove that brake band piston, B2 can pop out of there and disengage. So be really careful with that housing. And here's the advice in the handbook of what to do when you want to change out that piston out of the housing that I was working on last. You're supposed to disassemble the transmission, and that's the clutch, the secondary clutch, K2, and you're supposed to clamp this together and pull it out, so you can before that you take this little dog bone looking thing out, and there's this plastic thing that keeps the dog bone in place that most likely, if you try to take it out, is going to break on you. So with that taken out, you can actually push this out far enough to move this piston out of the housing, just enough to get the O-ring out of the housing right there. That's upside down. Good luck. Happy wrenching with this one.
Hi there. I've been checking on success. This morning there was not a drop of oil anywhere on the floor. I finally have fixed the oil leak on the transmission on this 1987 300 SDL. Has about 200,000 miles on it. The tranny inside looks brand new. It's amazing. Whoever had it before must have taken good care of it. But here I had 8-9 leaks on this thing. Front shaft seal, the oil pump seal, the B2 piston, there's another cover up front. There was the auxiliary oil pump, the dipstick, the rear main seal, the auxiliary solenoid, meaning the kickdown solenoid. I had the gear shaft mechanism, and now finally the last one, that small little actuating piston for the K2, B2 brake band. So with that, happy wrenching. I recommend whenever you have the tranny out, do all of these O-rings while you have the tranny out, clean it up, and then the machine is right back together and becoming a lean, mean driving machine again, even after 30 plus years. Happy wrenching.